Lisa and Diane have a concert coming up in just a couple of weeks on the 9th. We'd love to have you be there for that. We're doing some radical earth one and stuff like that, right? All right. Happy to see that. So if you don't have tickets yet, right over in the kiosk you can buy tickets, or I'm guessing Lana will have them out on the table out there. We're also doing a retreat coming up in a couple weeks. It is on the 10th. The deadline for signing up, though, is this week. It's about sharing the mystery. If you'd like to be part of that retreat, we'd love to have you be there for that. Did you notice the title this week? Our preposition is the word until. Until. It's a word that's pregnant with emptiness and anticipation. And a particularly hard metal 1960s rocker named Donovan sang a song that I think talked about this word. He sang, "First there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is. First there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is." Do you like that song? Yeah. Kind of a cool little song. It works really well in an elementary school classroom because you can adapt it in a lot of different ways. When a kid comes up crying, you can say, "First there was a pencil, then there is no pencil, then there is." The problem is the kids figure this out after a while, and they come up and they go, "First there was a homework, then there was." Being in that space of until is not a simple space to be in. And it feels like we're waiting, like the call to awareness, for that mountain to arise, and it doesn't usually arise, and we're wondering, where is it? I need it. Do you remember where we were a year ago? Not sitting here, because it wasn't open yet. We were waiting, wondering, when will it, how will it, what do we have to do to make it all get ready? Until. In the midst of until, it's hard to see beyond. Because that moment, whatever it is, that stuff, that event, that thing that's right there in front of us, so captures every bit of attention that we often don't see something important, something more. Elisha was there with Elijah. He was following him. He's wanting to learn from this great prophet, but he knew something was up. Well, he knew it because a lot of people were coming up to him leading up to this story and saying, "Hey, did you know?" He said, "Shut up." He said that several times. Even Elijah himself said, "You can wait here." And said, "No, I'm following you." And all of a sudden that happens. And the one he loves is taken away, gone. He tears his clothes in half because in that moment he sees the loss so much. He sees what he doesn't want to have happen so much that he misses what we celebrate, that chariot of fire coming down. That story of something miraculous, but in the moment he didn't quite see it. It's an iconic moment in the Bible because we get in those same spaces where a chariot of fire is around us, but we're so busy seeing something that blocks its view. I watched a movie this week, and it's the movie that song came from. You know, the Academy Award nominated song by Lisa and Diane, and right? Right? Isn't it you guys that are up for the Academy Award? They say that. One of them, yeah. So it's about these two families, racially diverse families, and when you got into the families, you saw they were even more different. And those two men in the center went off to World War II and came back, changed from being away, but coming back to rural Mississippi that hadn't changed that much. And they had to figure out what to do in that space that was a space that left them mud-bound and struggling to figure out what to do and how to do it. First there is a problem, then there is no problem, then there is. First there is a problem, then there is no problem, then there is. Walter Brueggemann said that the prophetic task of the church is to tell truth in a society that lives in illusion, grieve in a society that practices denial, and express hope in a society that lives in despair. We don't know how to do that well, because we all find ourselves trapped in that despair and that illusion as well. But somehow our job is to figure out how to rise above that. Pop Evil, the singing group, told us how we had to do it. They say, beneath the ash I'm dying till I rise again. I'm not afraid. I'm never going to stop till I break down this cage, escape from these chains. You'll never silence my voice. No, I'm waking the lions in me. And seeing something beyond whatever this moment called out of us. You might have noticed I'm wearing a kind of pretty tie. I don't wear a tie all the time. But I wear it because this is one of my very favorite ties. Sorry, I'll show it to you. It's Starry, Starry Night. Right? And I love what Vincent van Gogh did in this painting because he made the stars larger than normal. Because when you're in that space of until, you need something that seems a little larger than real, a little larger than life, that lion, to draw you forward. So I want to share with you a few stars today that are drawing my heart forward. The first ones are Josh and Wally Lee. This is their family, 4 little girls, and 5 years ago they published a letter where essentially they came out together. He's gay, they're a Mormon family, and so of course they got married because that's what you do in the Mormon church, but it wasn't where he needed to be. But they said they're going to stay together and they're going to make this work. But this week, they came up with the next step. Because as they went through those 5 years from that first step to now, they realized that while they loved each other and were best friends, that the companionship that both of them needed was not there. That they needed an intimacy beyond just that. And so they hope to have some kind of space where they can keep their family together, but where each of them can go in their own spaces. And so they're getting a divorce to say, what's next? How do we continue next? And they had to explain that to those 4 little girls. And they used a book named Stella Luna. And Stella Luna is a bat who loses his mother and ends up in a nest of birds who aren't quite the same as him. In fact, instead of those nice things he has to eat, he has to eat bugs. But he's so hungry, that's what he does for a time, but he finds himself not being happy with that, and he needs to move towards. And he likes to hang upside down, unlike birds. And Josh said this, I can't tell you how difficult it is to look into the abyss you were told was evil and filled with lava and poisonous snakes your whole life, only to be told later by God, you know that pit you've been drawn to and taught to hate your whole life? Well, I'm going to need you to jump into it without a parachute, into pitch black. I promise you won't get hurt. I promise to catch you. I promise to help you fly. It's absolutely terrifying. First there is a hang-up, then there is no hang-up, then there is. First there is no hang-up, then there is a hang-up, then there is. Our house in Glendale sits right on the edge of the west side of the valley. I'm a dedicated Phoenix West Side person. And one of the heroes of that side is sometimes called the father of the West Valley, is a man named John F. Long. And he literally built that side of the valley. It's called Maryville because his wife's name was Mary. And we lived on one of the very first streets that he built there back in the 1940s. He built our house, as he built a lot of houses, and led to much of the growth in that side of it. One day he sat at an elementary school not far from our house and not far from Epworth Church where I served. And he talked to a third grader. And that third grader asked him a question. Now this was a kid who had come to our country illegally with his parents when he was 3 years old. And he asked this man, what inspired you to do what you've done to build this space? John F. Long replied, we think we're just one person, but in reality, one person can make a huge difference for many people. And this young third grader grew up, as boys tend to do sometimes. And this week he was at the state capitol in the midst of a protest with people against them. And they looked at the color of his dark skin. Hold that just a second, we'll get to that one. They looked at the color of his skin and they said this, you're illegal, once illegal, always illegal. Now this young boy who bore an amazing name, Cesar Chavez, after his parents' heroes, he had become legal in 2001. But they were still yelling at him. And so he looked at him and he spoke some words. And he spoke them because of a song that he had learned growing up. And it says, antes de que yo naciera, yo ya cantaba. Me lo dijo un día mi madre, que en el vientre le canté. Means, before I was born, I sang. My mother once told me that in her womb, I sang to her. And he chose to sing back. Cesar Chavez looked at these people who were calling him illegal and he said, yep, I'm your illegal state legislature. Because he now represents that area where my school is at, where my church was at, where my house was at. And like the boy that I'm going to show you, he is giving the next call to the generation. If you build a wall, my generation will knock it down. First there is a roadblock, then there is no roadblock, then there is. First there is a roadblock, then there is no roadblock, then there is. Speaking of gutsy kids, let me tell you about 21 amazing youth who are suing the U.S. government. These kids from 10 years old to 21 years old are standing up with boldness and energy and excitement and saying, you're not treating us right. Their complaint asserts that the government's actions that are causing climate change has violated the youngest generation's constitutional rights to life, liberty, and property, as well as failed to protect essential public trust resources. And even though the government seems to be doing everything they can to fight this lawsuit, it continues forward and was supposed to have a hearing coming up in the next week. Now that's been delayed, and so pray about that. Pray for these kids as they try to figure out how to continue to be bold. But let me tell you about one of them in particular. His name is Shutescat Martinez. He's 17 years old, and he said this, my generation is rewriting history. We're doing what so many people told us we were incapable of doing. We're holding our leaders accountable for their disastrous and dangerous actions. They're expecting our government to change. They're expecting our government to see them and to move towards this space where they're at into that space where they need to be. Will you go one more picture? This is that way that.
Is this Lena?
the biggest challenge we face is us. And they're helping us to discover that. The minister from the Danish minister who was at Davos this week said this: I miss America on the international scene. First there is a question, then there is no question, then there is. First there is no question, then there is a question, then there is. I think what bothers me most about where we are politically right now, besides those two words which we have got to excise from our vocabulary. Fake news should not be around anymore. Because you know what we use those two words for? We use it to not listen to each other. We use those two words just to say, I don't have to hear anything else you say. We've got to take those out of our lexicon. But it derives from what those come from. And that's the pessimism and the negativity that's there. God is not one who drags us down. God always is drawing us forward to something. Always leading us towards, always helping us see something beyond just the right now. God is leading us to that until. And even though we can't grasp it right now, we've got to keep holding that up for each other. And sometimes I think we do that because, you know, after you get past a certain stage, your body is kind of spiraling downhill. You might have noticed that. And we sometimes think that's the truth about us, but you know what happens as that body spirals downhill? Your spirit strengthens. And we've got to stop following that one side of things and start seeing the way we are getting stronger and stronger, and we've got to start helping each other to see that. We have to rediscover that we can lift our bodies, we can lift our spirits, lift our country, and lift our world. Caterpillar sheds his skin to find a butterfly within. Caterpillar sheds his skin to find a butterfly within. Mary J. Blige, who was one of the actors in that movie Mudbound and who sang that song, did such a good job reminding us that this present moment where our feet feel stuck in the mud is not the bottom line. It's not the end statement, that there's something more. Let me read you a few of those words that they sang just a bit ago. Life is a teacher. Time is a healer. And I'm a believer like a river wild. Ego is a killer. Greed is a monster. But love is stronger. Stronger than them all. So like a river, let that love wash you clean. Like a river, let it cut right through, because it never gives up, so full of life. Like a river, let it wash away the pain from yesterday. All it takes is time to wash this bloodline. Like a river, let it wash us clean. I want to tell you one last story of one more set of stars that are shining in my life right now. Someone called them the sister survivors. It's a set of women who chose to be brave in a space where they could have been very silent. Because as one of them said, those gymnasts said, if you got hurt, you sucked it up. If you were tired, you kept going. But these gymnasts stood up and they said, we're going to speak. We're going to talk. And the judge to them said something so amazing. I hope you heard these words, and if not, listen. That judge looked at these girls who could have been silent, these women who could have turned themselves back into that silent space, and said, you will be listened to. You will be believed. First, there's understanding, then no understanding, then there is. First, there's understanding, then no understanding, then there is until.